everyone, welcome to the September 17th edition of the TimeformUS Forecast. I'm David Aragon, and I'll be joined in just a second by my co-host Craig Milkowski as the two of us get back into these podcasts this week after taking a little bit of a break. I was not on, nor was Craig earlier this week for the Pacecast. There just wasn't a whole lot of racing going on the past week, just some Kentucky Downs action, which I know Craig wasn't the most eager to talk about, but Craig kept the show going last week with some guests. I got to do a little bit of listening. I was off, recharging from the Saratoga meet after that long grind for 8 weeks, but happy to get back into it this week with Craig as we do some handicapping for the weekend. And we're going to be taking a look at a multi-race sequence at Churchill Downs on Saturday, the late pick 5. They've got 4 stakes that are part of this sequence, including a couple of pretty intriguing 2-year-old stakes, the Iroquois and the Pocahontas, which will serve as early preps for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and Juvenile Fillies later in the year. So we'll talk about those as well as some of the other stakes on the card. I know that She Dares the Devil, one of the top older fillies and mares in the country, will be participating as likely the heavy favorite in the Locust Grove. And all of these races will be on the dirt as they are renovating their turf course at Churchill Downs, as I'm sure many of you know. So we have this all dirt late pick 5 sequence. And Craig, looking forward to going through it.
Yeah, it's almost like handicapping Oaklawn, except we don't have we have 2-year-old racing, which we don't get there with the all dirt. So it's kind of a good thing for me as a figure maker, though as a bettor, I love turf racing too, so no problem with that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back to this forecast. Good to have you back. I hope you refreshed the engines there and are ready to go. You sure sound like it.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of a discussion earlier this week with the DRF video team. Going to have some new things on the horizon that we're looking forward to. And we were even talking about this forecast and how moving forward, we're probably going to focus quite a bit more on multi-race sequences, trying to find an interesting one each week that we can go through and talk a little bit more about ticket strategy, how to construct a wager. So we'll try to get into that as we usually do at the end of the show, but maybe talk about it a little bit more in depth. And I think that's something we can really do in this sequence because I think there are some legs where you can lean on horses and other legs where you might want to spread and take a shot against a few favorites. Let's get right into it. And Craig, I'm going to throw it to you to start off this first leg, the Louisville Thoroughbred Society, because I've got an inkling that I know we're going to go in this race, given your past comments about a specific horse in here. So who do you think is the one to beat in this spot?
Yeah, and I'm sure you're right about it. I think Just Might is clearly the horse to beat for me in here. Some might look at his race at Colonial Downs. He's a horse that I think is just as good or better on dirt as he is on turf. And the numbers had kind of borne that out over the years. But he kind of ran a slow speed figure despite winning that Chesapeake Stakes. But I think that was largely in part to it being a pretty slow pace. I don't think he meets any real killers in here, so I do think he's clearly the horse to beat, and I'm going to use him pretty heavily. But I wouldn't call him a single. I am a little bit afraid of Bengo. He's a horse who has shown to be very versatile. He won his last race while right up on the lead at Ellis Park, albeit in a slow pace. But he's not the kind of horse that wants to be up front most of the time, so I actually give him a little extra credit from that. He's won 3 in a row. If you go back to that third race back, he came from well back in the field when the pace was a little bit quicker. So that is something that always worries me. His speed figures are a little bit less than what we get from Just Might when he runs his best races, but I don't think you can totally dismiss him.
Yeah, I expected us to have a very similar view of this race when I looked at it because you've been a little bit more adamant about Just Mike getting on the dirt than I have, but kind of looking through his form, I do tend to agree with you. He ran that big figure going back to that off-the-turf race at the Fairgrounds earlier in the year. And, last time out I was watching that race at Colonial, there's actually a slight error in the chart. The first call, it's actually switched. Mucho was up by a length and Just Might was second by a length. We'll write to somebody at Equibase and probably get that fixed as soon as possible. But he was actually reserved off the pace a little bit. And I would actually, in this race, given that he's drawn inside of Bango, I prefer that they just get aggressive with Just Might, send him to the lead and try to take no prisoners on the front end because he seems to do his best running when they go fast up front. So I would like to see him ridden that way. And I agree. I think that he and Bango are the two protagonists in this race. And if Just Might is a slightly better price, I would give him preference. And maybe maybe lean on him a little bit more in the first leg of this pick 5 sequence, also using Bango, mostly these two. I was kind of trying to make a case for Dennis's Moment on the inside. He's kind of a funny horse I didn't know what to do with. Obviously so talented as a 2-year-old, but went wrong. It seemed like maybe he got back on track last time at Ellis Park. What did you make of him?
Yeah, I actually watched that race a few times because it was a race that was mistimed, but it still came up as a very fast race on the clock. But it was more a function of that surface at Ellis Park, which just oftentimes gets lightning fast. He didn't get much of a speed figure. There was a slow pace in the race. It was good to see him finally run a good race again. He was a horse that was most people's Kentucky Derby favorite after he won the Iroquois a couple years ago. But he just didn't run near fast enough. I think it was more of a case of it just being a very weak field, and maybe people will latch on to that time that he ran. I still think it was like sub 109 if I remember right, but it just wasn't that quick of a race.
Yeah, I ultimately went a little bit against him here, even though he did close decently from just off the pace into some pretty moderate to slow fractions, I assume, if those are indeed correct, the hand time fractions. I guess he deserves slight extra credit for that as opposed to the other horse coming out of that race that actually finished ahead of him, Derby Date. I do prefer Dennis's Moment out of that race. I just thought that Just Might and Bango had better sprint credentials for this spot. Let's move on to the first of those 2-year-old stakes on this card. That's the 8th race, the Pocahontas Grade 3 event for the fillies, going a mile and a 16th. And to me, this is a pretty wide open race. You can make a case for a lot of runners. I'll be very interested to see how they bet this race. The 5-2 morning line favorite is on the 1s and 2s. And if she's the favorite, I want no part of her. I could find very little excuse for her last race in the Saratoga Special, where she got a great pace setup and just had absolutely no punch through the stretch. I don't know if she'll be the favorite in this race. I didn't really see it that way, but if she is, I want to go in a different direction.
Yeah, she's a she, so it was the Adirondack. I'm sure you knew that.
Yes.
Not the Saratoga Special, but we totally agree on the morning line favorite in here on the 1s and 2s. She's the kind of horse I will almost always bet against in these 2-year-old races. She looks like she was an early bloomer. She won one of those really early maiden races at Churchill at 5 furlongs. She ran okay in that stakes race at Churchill, the debutante, where she was just beating a length. Then she tried to 6.5, had no real excuses at all. And I just think she's one of those that had a maturity edge early on. I see nothing that indicates that 2 turns is going to improve her at all. So for me, yeah, I'm totally against her. So the horse I wound up jumping straight to, I mean, I really liked what I saw in the debut at Colonial was the 9 horse Hidden Connection. She ran a really big figure for Brett Calhoun that day. He's a horse that runs quite a bit of horses at Remington here, so I'm familiar with him. And I just liked everything I saw from this race. She was tracked a pace, which wasn't particularly fast, just kind of moderate, and exploded through the lane. I'll leave the breeding to you, but I don't see any reasons to think she couldn't get a mile and a 16th. And I think she will definitely be my top pick in here. Another horse I look to, not a big fan of the post, but I think I have to use the 11-horse Joy Runner in here. She's done nothing wrong in her 2 starts for Laura Wallers and Mattress Mac. She's winning her races really easily. She seems another, to me, being by Gun Runner. That seems like 2 turns should be no problem at all, and her 90 speed figure isn't that far off of the top horse that I already mentioned. So those will be the top 2 that I key on, but especially the 9 Hidden Connection.
Yeah, Hidden Connection's 9-2 on the morning line. I felt like she would have to take more money than that just based on everything you said. She was so visually impressive in that debut. Now, yeah, that was just going 5.5 furlongs. We'll see how far she ultimately wants to go because from 5.5 to a mile and 16th is quite the stretch out. But there is route pedigree. Her dam is actually a full sister to this horse named CJ's Awesome, who is a pretty accomplished dirt router, and she's by Connect. We've seen some of the Connects be precocious, but he was a horse that could certainly go at least a mile and 1 1/8. So she's got the pedigree to go longer. We'll see if she can handle it. And I mean, I know the TimeformUS pace projector is predicting a fast pace in this race. I see some speed, but I don't think there are that many horses that are necessarily need the lead types in this spot. So she might be able to get out to the front and potentially get comfortable. She's the most exciting horse in this race to me by far, but she also has some big questions to answer. I mean, as far as horses that I just think are going to appreciate this stretch out, I'm on the same page as you with the number 11 Joy Runner. Not a great post position, but just the way she's finished off her races, you're completely right that she seems like one that should appreciate the extra ground, and her dam wanted to go long, albeit on the turf, but there is route pedigree there. And the other horse that really interested me, who if I was making picks in this race, I'd probably put on top, is the number 5 Majestic Doro for Brendan Walsh. I thought this filly was pretty impressive in her debut at Indiana. She was off the pace early, made a menacing move around the far turn, one going away at the end, and she's got plenty of route pedigree, even though she's by Speitster, who's a sire of a bit more precocity on the dam side. She's a half-sister to this horse named Take Charge Doro, who actually won one of those 1 3/4 races that closes out the Oaklawn meet. So plenty of stamina there, and she just seemed like one that might appreciate the stretch out and could be a price for Brendan Walsh, who, if you look it up in DRF Formulator, he has good numbers. Horses making their second starts off debut wins. He is 5 for 21, 24% with an ROI that's well above $2, actually close to $3. So I think there are some angles pointing to Majestic Doro. So I would kind of completely chuck on the 1s and 2s. I don't want her at all. And I would focus mostly on those 3 horses I mentioned, with a little bit of Goddess of Fire, who I thought ran pretty well in her debut at Saratoga and could be another one that has speed and might be able to take advantage of the inside post.
Yeah, I was going to mention the same horse as you. They would kind of be my A's in the race, maybe A and a B. The other ones I was going to mention was Goddess of Fire as you. It's really hard to dismiss Todd Pletcher in these races. I didn't have a chance to look up the formulator stat, how he does in these kind of spots, stretching out off a debut maiden win. But I would imagine they're not bad, and she certainly looked like one who has some talent. And even the horse inside of her ran a very nice race, Code for Success, and is going to be a much bigger price. So that's another one I would toss in as maybe a C, just if you're right, because I'm with you on the favorite, the morning line favorite on the 1s and 2s. I'm completely chucking that horse. So if we're right about that, I want to make sure I cast a pretty wide net.
Yeah, one more horse, and I know we're spending a lot of time on this race, but I think this is one of the spread races in this sequence. The one other horse I do want to mention before we move on is the number 6, Maxine Machine, who I wasn't totally sure what to do with, but her debut at Ellis Park is worth going back to watch, even though it was on the turf. She didn't get the most comfortable trip. She was kind of down inside most of the way, looked a little green in upper stretch. It seemed like she was kind of reluctant to go through a hole on the inside, and finally it opened up for her, and she really came through impressively at the end of that race with a nice turn of foot and just finished up like a horse that has maybe more ability than the speed figure might indicate. And the fact that they're moving to dirt now, I'm not sure quite what to make of it. I mean, I know Brad Cox did this with another horse whose name some people might remember, Monomoy Girl, who I think started out on turf earlier in her career and transitioned to dirt very quickly and became a champion on that surface. Not saying that Maxine Machine necessarily is going to turn into that kind of horse, but she does have more of a dirt pedigree, at least from her dam, Emma Zoncourt, who won the Grade 1 Prioress on the dirt. So there is some pedigree there to suggest that she might be able to make that transition. Just another interesting horse in a wide open race.
Yeah, certainly no problem with using her whatsoever for all the reasons you said.
Move on to the division of this race for the males, the Grade 3 Iroquois going 1.16 miles on the dirt, same distance. And this one, I think you can narrow down a little bit more, at least for my preferences. I like the number 6, Stellar Tap, who is probably going to be the favorite in this race. I would imagine a pretty substantial favorite. A lot of impressive debut winners this summer at Saratoga, and for my money, Stellar Tap is right up there with the best of them. I know that he received most of the accolades because he's the one that handed Steve Asmussen that historic victory, making him the winningest North American trainer of all time. But Stellar Tap ran extremely well to win that race, setting a pretty fast pace, involved with another horse who ended up fading, I think, back to 5th, and he went on and won impressively over some horses that came from the back of the pack. It was a race that really fell apart behind him. Stellar Tap is bred to stretch out in distance, and I just think he's probably pretty talented.
Yeah, I did want to mention it's a field of 11, just like the Pocahontas, and it's also a race to pace projector pace projector predicts there's going to be a fast pace. And I wanted to piggyback a little on what you said earlier. It's a little tough with these 2-year-old races. I personally think they feature a fast pace a little too often. I haven't come up with a good solution on that, though, because so many horses in these races only have a maiden win to their credit. They usually do them on or near the lead. And as we know, all the horses in a race like this can't be on or near the lead. Some are there because they're just better than the fields they face the first time out, not necessarily their style. So I do always take those with a grain of salt. As for Stellar Tap, I would say, just like you, he's clearly the horse to me. He ran a big fig that day. I think it was 109. The race has proven to be very strong. Looking through the chart, there's nothing that would say be leery of that big figure, because some horses have come back to win out of it already, some figure matches. So no problem with that for me. I don't see any reason why he can't stretch out. So he's a horse I'm going to lean on pretty heavily in here. The ones I really have questions about, a couple come out of the same race, and I'm not sure what to do with them, so I'll be interested to hear your thoughts, and that's Major General and Bourbon Heat. They both come out of the same race, a race won by Maiden General on the lead. Not as fast as Stellar Tap, but he did get a triple-digit TimeformUS speed figure for the win, as did Bourbon Heat. But I'm just a little leery of that race. I can't put a finger on why. Maybe it's the visual watching the replay. They just didn't look as good to me. Maybe it's a big jump up from Bourbon Heat. But I'm kind of skeptical of those two in here as alternatives to the favorite. The one that I will use in a lesser role than Stellar Tap in the bet is Guntown. He's a horse who comes in off a nice win at Ellis, tracking a really slow pace, and he just looks like another one, like we talked about in the Pocahontas, that should relish another turn and some extra distance to me.
Yeah, as for that race that Major General and Bourbon Heist are coming out of, that was Alabama Day, and the race that Major General won was the first division of 2 maiden races on that card. The second division seemed like the better one. That was the race that was won by My Prankster, who seems like one of the top 2-year-olds that we've seen anywhere in the country so far. While Major General ran a slower time, he still got a respectable speed figure, not that far off the number that Stellar Tap got, and Major General was just a little bit green that day. He was hanging on his wrong lead for the entire stretch drive. Bourbon Heist, I thought that he got there, had every chance to go by, and just hung a little bit. And if you watch Bourbon Heist's prior race, I thought he kind of did the same thing, just hang a little bit, had his chance to get there, and just didn't forge past the leader both times. So I do think that Major General has more room to move forward off that race, and he's got speed, so he should be up on the front end along with Stellar Tap, and we'll see which one turns out to be better. I give preference to Stellar Tap, but I don't think Bourbon Heist is impossible. I should say, I don't think Major General is impossible, just because he showed that greenness first time out, and he might be able to step forward. And I agree with you. The third horse would be Guntown. He's already gone the mile, so he's answered more stamina questions, and he's a half-brother to Untappable and Patio Prado, so he's got that strong family to move forward with added distance. So, I mean, he has more to prove from a speed figure standpoint, but I think he definitely has the potential to go on and improve and do better in the future. Let's move on to the next stakes race in this sequence. That is the Grade 3 Locust Grove. And I believe this used to be a turf race, Craig, that they've transitioned to be run on the dirt this year. I guess they've had to do this with a few of the turf races they typically run at Churchill Downs to schedule it for the dirt. And this one's attracted some pretty talented runners in this filly and mare dirt division, as you've got She Dares the Devil, who's coming off that Grade 1 victory in the Clemendale Hirsch, as well as En Voutante, who has been in Grade 1 placed a couple of times in her career. She's coming back off a third place finish behind division leader Latrusco last time. They seem like the 2 classiest horses in the race, and obviously She Dares the Devil is way the horse to beat.
Yeah, it is. I'm actually going to use 3 horses in this race, and I'll get to that in just a second. There's not a whole lot for me to say about She Dares the Devil. I mean, she runs her race every single time. She does seem to have En Voutante's number. She's beaten her a couple times, but not that I don't want to totally dismiss that one, as I mean, she has come within a length of her a couple times back and ran pretty well. So I think she's got a shot in here too. I would definitely say I would put the majority of my play on She Dares the Devil, but I have to get through this. I mean, I can't get through this race without throwing Crystal Ball in. I was just really impressed by her race in the Shoe V. She was a horse who came into that race in pretty good form. She had won three in a row. I didn't like her at all that day, and she really kind of surprised me with how well she ran. And it's actually proven to be a really strong race. Horologist has come out of that race to win next time out with a big figure. Royal Flag ran really well, stepping up in class the next time out. So for me, I just have to give this horse a shot. She got a huge pace-adjusted pace figure or speed figure from us, a 125. So it's a horse that's going to be a price. I can't not hit this pick five if she were somehow to get up.
Yeah, she's a horse that I've never been the biggest fan of. I know that she's got some races that suggest that she could belong here. She's just a horse that's never really done it for me. I know she's got some credentials that suggest she belongs with these. She's just not really one that I was that interested in. But look, I don't want to waste energy talking you off a horse that's going to be a price in a race where most people are going to be sending their pick five tickets through the two favorites and likely mostly through She Dares the Devil. And I'm going to go with the crowd here. I think She Dares the Devil is much the horse to beat in this race. She was an impressive winner last time out at Del Mar. That was a really demanding surface that she raced over. You can see that from the slow final time and how slowly they came home that day, and she handled it just fine. She's just a horse that really takes her game anywhere. She's obviously had plenty of success at Churchill Downs. She doesn't always run her top speed figure. She kind of has her ups and downs, even though her results have been pretty consistent. But I think with her best race, she's going to be pretty tough to beat, and I like the fact that she's drawn the outside post position here because that's going to give Florent Geroux some options in a race where it seems like a few horses want to be forwardly placed, though I'm not going to totally discount En Voutante and she'd be the main backup for me. She does have races in her that put her on par with She Dares the Devil. It's just when she steps up against another grade one rival, it seems like she defers to that horse a little bit. She's done that a few times in the past, so I'll be interested to see if she can finally turn the tables on She Dares the Devil. But I do think she has a run in her to win this race.
Yeah, no problem with that. Like I said, I'm going to use three. But I would say She Dares the Devil will be the A for me, and then the other two would be more like B's.
Let's close out this sequence with a really confusing finale, the 11th race, and allowance nominators of one other than going the one-turn mile on the dirt at Churchill. And Craig, I could make a case for about 7 or 8 different horses in this race. There are a lot of ways to go. I will say, just from the standpoint of my approach to this race, I wanted to go against some of the older horses that have been banging heads at this level or in starter allowance races or claiming races, and kind of lean more towards the 3-year-olds that I think have a little bit of upside. And there are a few of those in this race from which to choose.
Yeah, there are. This is a race, as you said, I was running a little late today with the Belmont timing problems, and obviously I just went in order. This was the last one, and this would made me actually start recording a little bit late because it took a little more time than I was suspecting. It's a big field of 10. We have the fast pace flag on the pace projector, and as you said, there's a number of ways you could go in here, and I think you make an excellent point about the 3-year-olds. That's something I've long believed in these late summer, early fall races. I do think they start to lean towards favoring the 3-year-olds. And I almost always go that way. I'm going to use several in here, as I mentioned, but if I have to pick one as a horse on top, I'm actually going to go the Wayne Lucas trained Notary, just because of the pace setup. I think he's ran some nice races the last couple times out. He got a 107 speed figure behind Joe Frazier last time at a shorter distance that he probably wants. The time before that at Ellis, I don't think he's a horse at all that wants to be on the lead. He just kind of got stuck there from his post position, and he broke well that day. And he wasn't going particularly fast, but I just don't think he was comfortable in the lead. So I think this race will be a lot more to his liking. I'm just going with that. We have to make a top pick, so it'll be him. There's a few others that I want to use, but I'll defer to you for now.
Yeah, no, he's one that I definitely gave a look to. I ended up going in a different direction, but I would use him as a backup on my ticket. The horses that I gave preference to in this race were Arabian Prince on the rail and the number 9, Runway Magic. Arabian Prince returned from a layoff last time in a sprint race, and based on how they campaigned him in his 2-year-old season, seems like he's meant to be more of a router. They debuted him going this 1-turn mile distance. They stretched him out to 2 turns immediately after that. So that says to me, the sprint race at Colonial last time was probably just a prep, and he sort of ran that way, made a bit of a move at the quarter pole, but flattened out late. So I think he's likely to move forward off that, second off the layoff for Dallas Stewart. And based on the numbers that he ran as a 2-year-old, with routine improvement and maturity, he should be able to be right there against this field. And the other horse that I mentioned is the 9, Runaway Magic, who should be a decent price in this race. I actually tried him in the Sam F. Davis, one of the Derby preps back at Tampa Bay Downs in the early winter, and he obviously didn't run well that day at all. But the reason I liked him in that spot was he had been visually impressive, breaking his maiden going 7 furlongs at Churchill Downs as a 2-year-old. Then I thought he just didn't really have a chance turning back to 6 behind Drain the Clock at Gulfstream at his next start, and obviously something went wrong in Sam Davis because he was off for a while after that. Got a prep in on the turf last time. I think he's more of a dirt horse as a son of Run Happy, so now he's getting back to the right surface. I like the 1-turn mile distance for him, and I think he's one that could kind of fly under the radar at a price in this race. So I would use those 2 most prominently, but there are about 5 or 6 others that could be used as backups in this race.
Yeah, I do like Runway Magic. He's definitely one I'll be using. I'm not so sure how much that turf course at Ellis is really a turf course. It's very hard and firm, so it may be like a dirt course, but he ran his best speed figure ever, so I'm not going to knock him and assume he won't improve on a real dirt surface, because I'm sure that he will. And I do like that when he came back off of that layoff, off of being gelded, that he ran a lifetime best number. Flint Ridge is another one that I think has a shot. He is stretching out to the 1 mile distance, but he showed big improvement second time out. He's got the speed figure to compete in here, so he is one I'll use. The one that I definitely will not use, I believe he's the second morning line choice on here, is the number 2, Moda Galley. If you look, he's 3 for 18 in his career, but he's had so many chances at this level. He just never seems to get the job done. His 2 other wins outside his maiden win both came in claiming races when they finally kind of gave up on the allowance condition, dropped him in for a tag, and he was able to get the job done. But he's just a guy that always seems to take money, but I don't know if he's got some hang in him or what the story is. He's not a guy I want at this class.
Yeah, the horses that I was referring to when I said I was kind of against the older horses in this race were primarily Modigali and Accession, who does have those class lines from when he was a 3-year-old, but has never really gone on since then and seems to have tailed off a little bit. And like you said, Modigali's just had plenty of chances. And while his speed figures make him a contender in this race, it feels like others, mostly primarily the 3-year-olds, just have more upside than he does and are likely to take a step forward. Yeah, I think Flint Ridge is a contender in this race. He beat a pretty salty field at Saratoga last time, and he gave me the impression that a mile might be okay for him. I think even Jennings, while he's a 4-year-old, he's very lightly raced and is an interesting new face in this field as he faces winners for the first time. Thought it was a little odd that they ran him on the turf after he ran so well in his debut on the dirt, actually finishing in a dead heat with Ducale, who came back and ran a big speed figure when he broke his maiden at Saratoga. So, I mean, a lot going on in this race, many ways to go. I would lean towards the 1 and the 9, Arabian Prince and Runway Magic, and use some of the others as backups. And as we mentioned how we would sort these horses out, let's kind of transition into a bit of a ticket construction conversation. I actually went in DRF Ticketmaker, which you can access from the DRF website, and it allows you to do the Steve Christ ABC method and put some horses in as the A slot, the B slot, and the C slot, and then it will spit out how all of your tickets should be played after that. And if you're a DRF Bets user, you can just hit a button and play them in DRF Bets. But I actually constructed a ticket for this day just to kind of see how it would shake out from a price standpoint. And the ticket that I put in was actually under $50. And what I did was I leaned on Just Might in the first leg, race 7, using Bango as a backup. I spread quite a bit in the Pocahontas, using Majestic Doro, the 5, and the 11 Joy Runner as my 2 A's, and then some of the others that we mentioned as B's, and completely leaving out on the 1s and 2s. If she does well, I'm going to lose this wager. Moving beyond that to the 9th race, the Iroquois, I made my only A Stellar Tap, Major General, and the 9 Guntown were the 2 Bs for me. Nobody else in that race. I would try to go a little bit thinner there. Also going thin in the Locust Grove, where She Dares the Devil would be my A, and En Voutante would be the backup. And then the last race, I would spread quite a bit, but the 2 A's for me would be the number 1 Arabian Prince and the number 9 Runway Magic.
I will definitely get some practice in with that ticket maker since we're going to start focusing on these bets more. I did want to ask, did you leave Hidden Connection out of the Pocahontas? I didn't hear you mention her, and that just surprised me a little bit.
No, so I didn't mention her specifically, but she would be one of the horses that I would use as a backup. I preferred the 2 bigger prices more, Majestic Doro and Joy Runner. At least I assume they're going to be bigger prices than Hidden Connection, who I do think is going to take some money in that race. And, given the way that you want to structure these wagers, and I'm leaning on some shorter prices in different places, like She Dares the Devil, like the 2 favorites in the first leg, Just Might and Bango. So I want the ticket that I'm constructing to actually pay a worthwhile sum when I hit it. So I don't need to have most of my play going through another short price like Hidden Connection. I want to go with my opinions on long shots in these races, so I'm going to upgrade the 2 bigger prices, Majestic Doro and Joy Runner, and downgrade a horse like Hidden Connection. Not as much as I'm downgrading on the 1s and 2s, because I don't want to leave her out completely, because I do think she's one of the most likely winners of this race. I just wanted to give preference to the bigger prices.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a learning experience for me, I'll be honest, because I've always been more of a vertical player, a 1 race at a time kind of guy. But I am interested to look into this and figure out the ticket maker. I'm sure it's not too tough to use. So, yeah, looking forward to diving in and seeing what I could come up with. I think we were really similar in the sprint stake using those same 2. We were pretty close, so I tend to favor Hidden Connection a bit more. And I'm going to be my price source that I'm really going to hope help me out is Crystal Ball, if she can beat She Dares the Devil. More using her as a B than kind of a throw-in, maybe even more than En Voutante. And then spreading the last. I think, I don't know how you feel about it, though you play these more than I do. The way I'm going to look at it is I don't want to play tickets that have 4 or 5 favorites on them. I mean, it just seems completely silly to do that, which you can get into if you just play a caveman ticket and start using all the horses you're going to use. And I assume that's what the ticket maker kind of helps you with.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, the first objective, obviously, is to hit the wager. You want to have opinions that can have a chance to win. But yeah, you do want to avoid sending most of your money through those short-priced payouts that are going to create a negative ROI for you over time if you continue to hammer favorites too much in these wagers. So that's why what I was kind of getting at when I was saying I want to emphasize bigger prices in some of the races, even if I think that a horse like Hidden Connection is just as likely to win as some of the bigger prices that I like. I'm going to downgrade the shorter price and upgrade the bigger price, because that's going to give you a better chance to hit for a higher amount of money if you're right about your opinions in the other legs. So that's how I like to think about these wagers. But I think it's really good to have more conversations about this, because it's one of those things that there are a lot of misconceptions out there about what's the smartest way to play. I know some people take the route of shaming others when they don't play them the way their preferred way or what they think is the smartest way. But I think it helps and it's educational to have conversations about this. And you put out a really interesting perspective question on Twitter the other day about, what do you do with a heavy favorite in a sequence in the first leg? People should check that out on Craig's Twitter, because you got a variety of responses that I think is really enlightening and it's interesting to talk about. But I'm sure as we do this and we discuss different sequences, we'll come upon a situation like that where you do have a heavy favorite and you have to decide how you want to play it, or if you're not going to play that sequence at all.
Yeah, and like I even mentioned to one person, they were saying you just, if it's that kind of race, you skip it and play the pick four. But, we often run in, or a pick three if it were a pick four, you run into situations where the takeout might be a lot lower. So, in the pick five than it is in the preceding, the bets that come after. So there's a whole lot of things you have to weigh when you play these bets. And I'm going to try to educate myself as best I can, and hopefully we can help some people out.
Well, that's all the handicapping and ticket construction talk for today. We'll get back to the regular podcast schedule next week as we recap some of these races on the Timeform US Pace Catch, which we're going to record on Tuesday. But everybody, thanks for listening to the forecast today. Remember, you can always catch us on DRF.com, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Wherever you get your podcast, just make sure to subscribe to the Daily Racing Form channel and check out all of that content. So thanks for tuning in this week, and catch that Timeform US Pace Cast coming up next week.